environments and how we can support students in PBL environments through digital technology. Before I introduce the first presenter, I'd like to welcome you also to use the chat. You can introduce yourself in the chat, and you can use the chat also to post questions to the presenters or just comments if you have any. And we will keep track of the chat as well throughout and sort of summarize after each presentation, and also at the end we will discuss further. And of course, the presentation will take part in these first presentations, but we will also move forward, you can say, and discuss a bit more in the plenary discussion afterwards, where you are all very welcome to contribute your perspective. Great. I think, is there anything I'm missing here, Mike, in terms of the technology or anything? Great. Okay. Then I will just briefly introduce the first presentation. We have Daniel Adjaye-Boateng presenting the paper Annum et al. Titled The Impact of E-Learning in the Running of Laboratory-Based Programs in Higher Educational Institutions, a case study of the Department of Fisheries and Watershed Management at KNUST Kumasi, Ghana.
My name is Daniel Adjaye-Boateng, and I'm presenting on the topic, the impact of e-learning in the running of laboratory-based programs in higher educational institutions, a case study of the Department of Fisheries and Watershed Management, KNUST, Kumasi. The Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology has been experiencing increasing student enrollment over the past 5 years. This has impacted on the ability of departments that run practical-based programs in the studio or the laboratory. The Department of Fisheries has adopted a blended e-learning approach which integrates face-to-face sessions and recorded practical sessions to aid teaching and learning in the department. The focus of this presentation is to show the approaches adopted to enhance field practical activities in the department and to bridge the reduced time for field trips and industrial attachments and its impact on students' PBL skills. The technologies adopted were the Adobe Dreamweaver, an integrated development environment software, and the Camtasia Studio 2018, which were used to create an electronic learning site embedded with multimedia learning resources as indicated. The impact of these approaches on student problem learning activities were assessed based on a focus group discussion involving 12 students representing 30% of the entire class. The students found the videos a useful resource for learning about practices in the industry and advocated more practical sessions should be captured in video. They admitted that the videos have become a useful resource for promoting learning and development of problem learning skills, and that the blended learning approaches has reduced the turnaround time for acquisition of practical skills. Example, feed formulation and preparation and water quality sampling and testing in the lab as they watch these videos before going to the field to collect. The critical issues raised by the students were that the videos have to be long enough to adequately explain the concept or processes being explained, but not too long to cause them to lose attention. And that the images in the video have to be scaled appropriately for clarity in the procedures they seek to demonstrate. Example, the relative proportions of organs in a fish health class, and that the videos must highlight the common errors that occur in practice and prompt the student on how to deal with them. In conclusions, these approaches have assisted courses that dwell much on laboratory sessions to build capacity for problem-based learning by bringing the field practical activities to the classroom and accelerating problem-based skills for the students. Thanks for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. Do we have any sort of clarifying questions at this point? Otherwise, I think we will move on to the next presentation and then have collective discussions. I have some questions, but I think it might, it's quite short presentations. So unless you disagree, Daniel, I think we can all sort of discuss at the end. Yes, okay. Great. So the next presentation is by Thomas Bjørnar and Marius Christian Mick with the paper Tech Students' Perceptions of Social Media's Usefulness During PBL Group Work. Thomas, are you going to share your screen or?
I can do that.
Yes.
Sure.
Otherwise,
sure.
I mean, I don't know if Mike, you have it, but great.
You should be able to see it right now.
Yes.
Very well. Here it comes.
It's important, Thomas, that you share, the direct video, because right now we can only see, your folder.
Once more, I missed that.
Right now we can only see your folder where you have your video in, so you have to click on the video and then share the direct video and not this folder.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Just to make sure, does it work now?
We're still seeing your folder.
Okay, maybe could you present?
Do you have it, Michael?
I don't have it at the moment, but Thomas, if you send it to me, then I can share it for you.
Can I just say something, Mike? And Thomas, if you click on reshare, it should work. So when you share your screen and then you go up and say reshare again, I think it might work.
Okay, not that familiar with Zoom. I'm more in Teams, but where is this resharing?
In the up, when you share the screen, then you have the upper bar. When you said you have the share, you can stop sharing and click it again, and then it work.
Okay.
And then when you click again, you click in the video to share.
Yeah, sure. Does it work now? No, probably not. Yeah, sorry about this.
That's okay. We've had a bit of tech issues on our end as well. So yeah. Great.
Yeah, here we go. Here we go. I think we have it right now.
Yes, your screen sharing now. We're still in the folder though.
It is?
Yes.
Sure.
At least for me.
Okay, I will send it and
okay, great.
and maybe take the next presentation then.
Can we do that? Would that be okay for you, Ida?
That would be fine.
Okay, so the next presentation will be by Ida Guerra And that's the paper on preparing engineering students for collaborative project work, piloting an online course on PBL and project management.
So, yes, so good afternoon, everybody. I'm presenting this paper in collaboration with Frank, that is also here today, and Mathilde Chevrier from University of Nantes in France. And the title of our presentation is Preparing Engineering Students for Collaborative Project Work, and basically was to pilot an online course, fully online, on PBL and project management. Oops. So basically what we start by thinking is why the need to have a course, such a course in engineering master program. So a little bit of background. The Marine is a master program, 1 year, that is delivered by the University of Nantes in collaboration with 3 other universities, including Aalborg University. And it's the first time actually that the University of Nantes deliver PBL curriculum or program that is a problem-based project organized. And the project is composed by a project module of 2 ECTS and course modules online. All the courses are delivered online by partners from the other universities. And the need for actually prepare the students emerge, besides being the first experience, the need also emerged from the lack or limited knowledge from staff and students on how to manage and organize the learning in this PBL environment, in this new PBL environment. So this course was set up in collaboration with the University of Nantes, but delivered by the Aalborg University, by the Aalborg PBL Center. And the project and the course was composed by 15 hours and was part of the project module. So how was actually the course was organized? The rationale behind it, we can actually point out to 2 main points, 2 main aspects. The first aspect is that the course was focused on the students' needs and experiences and was also student-centered. So here I show a figure of how we organize the course, and we have online synchronous activities that corresponds to the online seminars, with the exception of the online seminar that was the kickoff seminar as introduction to the course, to the students and so on. All the other seminars address specific topics and were preceded by a preparation assignment. And this preparation assignment was actually the point of departure for the online activities. And this assignment, as you see in the bottom, was done by the group, by the students in groups and offline. So the other aspect that I would like to draw the attention is that we use the PBL principles as premises to design the course. And here, what I illustrate is actually its reflective aspects, where I illustrate in a reflective Colville's learning cycle the different moments and the different activities of the course. And on the right side, I actually point into the exemplarity aspect of the course. So we focus on actually identifying challenges that students might have in collaborating and working with project, and from there mobilized resources, apply those resources, implement actions and evaluate those actions. So it becomes some sort of process they can always use to actually improve their working project working processes. So beside actually this approach to the course, we conducted a course evaluation. And here I would like to draw your attention just to the focus we actually have. And this was based on the literature on distance and e-learning theory. We focus on 3 main aspects: the technology, the instruction, and the learning. But all of this was actually converging and looking into the students' learning experiences of this course and how and which value actually could give to them. So we actually run it online, the course, when the evaluation, when we finish the course, but unfortunately we have a very low response rate. So we cannot generalize the conclusions of what we got from the evaluation, but it actually opened for some reflections from a staff point of view, but also from a PBL perspective and practice perspective and distance and online learning. So here I share with you 2 quotes from a student that actually illustrate the relevance of how we actually prepare our students for this environment, for this new PBL environment, this problem-based project organized work. And he here says that planted the seeds to develop approach. So here's the exemplarity approach, but also they would like to have more. Unfortunately, it was not possible, but I think it made an impact. So I leave here with some final questions and reflections. So we can actually take it in a discussion further after. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ida.
Yes.
And as I said before, you're all very welcome to post questions in the chat. You can also, of course, keep them for later, but just a reminder that you can use it if you'd like. Maiken, do you have the last presentation? Then I will introduce
Otherwise,
it.
yeah,
Yes,
sure.
I have it. Yes, I will
Yes.
just send it to Ida. My internet is really challenging at the moment, and I'm trying to download it, and it's downloading, but it's going really slow. So I will just send it to.
Oh.
It's been an interesting day, internet connection wise here. So yeah.
So if you send it to me, yes.
Great.
It will take just a couple of seconds more. And look, you can start introducing Thomas if you want.
Great. Yes.
So
the paper by Thomas Bjørnar and Marius Christian Mick is titled "Tech Students' Perception of Social Media's Usefulness During PBL Group Work." So a very interesting topic, especially in these times.
And I think you will start seeing now. Yes?
Yes.
The aim of this study was, in contrast to much of the previous work, to determine the extent to which students perceive various social media platforms as useful within the context of their PBL group work. I am Thomas Bjørnar, 20 years of experience within qualitative user evaluations and mixed method strategies. I am the research group leader of MEGA, Media Innovation and Game Research. Also thanks to Marius Christian Mick, who provided the initial idea of this study and some of the data collection. The research question within this study was, what are tech students' perceptions of social media's usefulness within the PBL group work context? There are lots of previous work within this theme. However, there are also considerable divergent findings regarding the usefulness of social media. Previous identified advantages include, for instance, better perceptions of group work, support for offline engagement, interaction support, group synergy, and improved knowledge exchange. Previous identified negative consequences include, for instance, distraction, negative group performance, non-productive student behavior, and negative correlation with academic performance. This study is based on 45 tech students, 38 male and 7 female, enrolled in PBL groups across various bachelor's degree programs. The 45 tech students were sampled from 15 groups of 4 to 6 students. 3 students from each of the 15 groups were selected. A semi-structured interview guide was followed using the friendship pairs and card sorting. The friendship pairs method is a variation of the in-depth interview in which 2 to 3 participants who know each other well, for instance within a PBL group, are interviewed together. Friendship pairs can provide advantages because they enable participants to feel more comfortable, thus facilitating a more open, spontaneous, and deep discussion. We use this method because it enables students to support one another and providing a more dynamic interview. The card sorting was performed using a coordinate system. The vertical axis had extremes labeled non-useful and useful, and the horizontal axis has extremes labeled non-distracting and distracting. All participants in this study use social media platforms for group coordination, including Messenger, WhatsApp, Snapchat, and Facebook, but were also used in very dynamic and different ways within the groups. 30 students perceived and positioned Facebook as both distracting and not useful. However, they provided mixed elaborations on this position. Facebook was perceived as the primary group coordination platform by 10 out of 15 groups. There seemed to be some omnipresent coordination habits regarding the use of Facebook, and there were both positive and negative perceptions of Facebook use within the group work context. Google Drive, Overleaf, and Skype are perceived as useful and not distracting. They are part of the PBL learning synthesis process and function mainly as project writing and management platforms. Our findings reveals that if a social media platform was used for non-academic purposes and contains non-project relevant content, for example within a YouTube clips, it was perceived as not useful and distracting. However, social media platforms were perceived as useful if they contained group and project relevant content. We also found that the students perceived that having a strongly focused group within good group dynamics, it led to more benefits from using the social media. In conclusion, various social media platforms are perceived to have different purposes at different PBL stages. With a balanced facilitation, social media within PBL group work can be adopted to improve group collaborations and motivate students. The card sorting was a good method. However, in future studies, researchers can use the card sorting method with more participants for a longer period of time. To increase the validity and provide a more comprehensive data foundation, this study could also be supplemented with quantitative approaches to gain knowledge of what and how many types of social media each student has used, as well as their social media time spent within specific PBL tasks. Observations of the actual social media usage during group work might also be of interest.
Thank you very much. And so now we will move on to a bit of a discussion. So first, I think I would open the floor to questions you have for the presenters. And then we can have a bit more of a fluent discussion afterwards. So any questions for the presenters? I can see, Ada, you've posted one, but that's a more general one maybe for discussion. So any specific questions? Okay, I have one for Daniel. So very interesting work. And of course, all of your papers, they were written pre-COVID, you can say, or at least in a different time in many ways. So I'm wondering, how was your experience in the period after this? Like, did you continue the course in this way? Did you expand further on the use of videos?
Yes, thanks for the opportunity. We're going to have more of these because the traditional things we used to do, taking students on field trips, going on industrial attachments. Now there's restriction on the number of students that can be sent. Mm-hmm. And even some places, out of caution, they are not even accepting students. So it's interesting to give them this practical feel. If these activities are captured in video and the students can have time to watch this, and if there's limited time for them to go to the field, they are able to appreciate this before they go to the field, or better still use this. It can be a complete substitute, but at least it bridges the gap for them to acquire these skills. And it's a challenge because we are confronted with previously, pre-COVID, we were grappling with the number of students. Now COVID restriction on numbers and opportunities even to send students. So some places, they are not accepting students at all. So it's on hindsight, we need to do more of this. Thank you.
Great. I was also wondering if you, because one thing I've seen students also use sort of videos, for instance, in lab work when they've been limited, right, in this time where they're limited in the labs, to sort of, you know, transfer that knowledge of how to do something hands-on. But I'm curious about sort of the tacit knowledge, or do you think they also get grips with the knowledge that is sort of very hands-on, very tacit, or what is your observations so far?
What I've realized is that it helps. The videos cannot replace entirely hands-on.
Mm-hmm.
But what it does is that it sort of quickens the time for them to get the knowledge. So they watch this, they see how things are done, but certainly they have to go to the lab, they have to go to the field for some of these things that you can never acquire in the classroom. So it speeds out the process, but still we need to do some form of practicals, despite all the restrictions. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so there's a question in the chat from Ron to Thomas. What are the boundaries for too much social media interaction? Or is there not really a boundary for too much, do you think?
Yes, thanks for this question. Yeah, it's. I'm going to provide a little bit of a complex answer to this question, because it is rather complex. So it pretty much depends on both the users, the context, and the technology. So you could say as such that there actually are no boundaries, but of course there are also boundaries embedded within both kind of the specific purposes, within the content, within the context, and within the technology. Within this study, I mean, much use within coordination. So different group coordination with different diverse used platforms. But also in general, I mean, the findings from this study, it's also providing, I think, a reminder of today's students that they are actually grown up with social media and maybe have a totally another approach than kind of older senior staff teachers. And what we also could see is that they multitask. They without kind of any problems, they multitask between the different social media. However, I would also say that there is actually needed a kind of a balanced facilitation, and that actually also goes into how the supervisors, for instance, could or should have access to some of the documents that the students they work with. So due to also ethical issues, I think there are some boundaries for having access for supervisors. Of course, the supervisors should not have access to some of the internal documents that the students they work with. So yeah, it's also about access and the different kinds of content, different kinds of motivations within specific outlines of projects.
Ron, would you like to do you have a similar experience, or is it different on your end?
Well, no, first of all, thank you, Thomas. That was a great answer. No, we're still trying to explore this, actually. We have a bit of a divide. Even some of our very younger staff have not lived this world that these students are, and how the COVID situation has brought all of the project teams to a different place digitally. And now us trying to grapple with how does that interface with all of the social media, the social interactions, people Snapchatting this and Snapchatting that, and I'm like, what? So no, I really enjoyed your presentation, and it's really something we need to be thinking about. But we do not have our arms wrapped around this yet. So thank you.
I was also wondering, actually, Thomas, because I mean, a lot of this is also, I think, my guess would be was a very also educational experience for the students to sort of sort out when do we actually use social media in a productive way, when is it distracting, and so on. So I'm curious if you if you thought about it as also sort of an, a reflective tool, like in group work, where you can use this to sort of map out how do we experience and how do we want to use social media in this group.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was actually also the kind of an attempt to actually identify and map some of the social media within this coordinate system, within the usefulness and not distracting elements. And it actually comes from the theory behind is the technology acceptance model from Davis and Venkatesh and others. So taking the inspirations actually from technology acceptance and then have it within this PBL function of social media. And it actually makes sense also because one of the elements in the technology acceptance model is both the, of course, the acceptance, but also whether it can be recommended to others. So it's kind of interesting also how actually the students, they are actually very reflective about it, and they are pretty aware and already know what they are doing in terms of when it's not kind of useful and when it's not beneficial. But the thing is, and what is interesting is also, I mean, this is, I mean, kind of one shot, one time, actually also before the COVID-19 outbreak. So it could be interesting to repeat this within this COVID-19 lockdown. However, I think also there are actually I'm a little bit concerned about the validity and reliability also in this. So I think we are not that far in terms of actually the accuracy by the findings. So I think there is pretty much work to do in the future to also be more careful about the validity and reliability. Yeah, so yeah, it's because it's also dynamic. That's my point. It's also dynamic, very dynamic, both from group to group, but also from semester to semester. I mean, there is huge differences from how first semester groups they work, also because they are 7 students typically. 6 to 7 students. So of course there is more that is needed to be coordinated, and also the potential for having some unuseful, unproductive, distracting elements is much higher when the number of participants increases. Whereas if you have a master thesis with maybe 2 members in the group, it's actually another kind of way that they use these social media platforms.
Ida, did you have a comment for that? You look like, I don't know, you can't raise your hand, it seems, in this room, but feel free. You're still muted though.
Yes, sorry, not as a host, I figured it out earlier.
Right, okay, great.
But Thomas, very interesting. And it's just actually came to my mind when you talked about validity and reliability. Is the students in mediology, they have been using these tools for many years. And a few years ago, I cannot say exactly when, but maybe 2017, around that, I actually went to look into their content process analysis and see what tools they actually use. And it's all social media. It's basically the same, a little bit more upgraded. There was no Spotify at the time of Snapchat. So it's upgraded, but I wonder why they use these tools. And I wonder why Trello is not useful. I was wondering why, because that's probably the only one that is a more formal project management tool. So I don't know if you question them in terms of why, because I think that would be very interesting to know, honestly.
Yeah, thanks for this. yeah, this is not only based on Mediology students, but there are also other kind of tech students. So it's tech students in general. But I think one of the kind of explanation is also that they are simply interested in technologies. However, I also think that there are also some barriers, some institutionalized barriers into this in terms of access and also in terms of knowledge. I mean, lots of students, they do not know, I mean, some of these management tools that also could be provided. So they simply do not have the overview of the more specific project management tools, probably because they have not been introduced to these tools, which could be that they are not accessible due to IT, I mean, facilitations and all the system that for actually having things like this on the computer, it needed to be go through a pretty tough admin process for being accessible within the IT software due to problems with hacking and all the things. So just to say also that there are also some institutionalized barriers into this. Did it answer your question? Or
Yes, but it's actually a quite different perspective because not so what I was expecting as actually, because I've talked with teachers, friends that suddenly they have to teach online in high school and so on because of the confinement. And one of the comments they said is that they are this generation of technologies and everything, but they actually cannot move out from this frame that they are used to. And that's why I asked this question to you, because they are, and I thought this was quite interesting because they are like all the time and everything, right? And they are very acknowledged, but they do not get out of their frame, I would say, or the familiarity apps they use. So
yeah, but of course not. I mean, it's, I would say, it's like what the famous German sociologist Niklas Luhmann, how he phrased it pretty well. He stated that you cannot see what you can't see, as well as you can't see your own eye. Yeah. I mean, you need someone to also open your eyes, for otherwise you are just, I mean, in your own bubble. As you put it as well. So yeah, it also needs to be provided in other ways, to have other kind of inputs, for instance, from supervisors, from teaching, from external partners, from internships, where they actually can, and that is what we could see as well, that there is actually a kind of a change when they actually go in their internship, where they have a broader perspective into more specific project management tools.
Very interesting. I think this also speaks into a bit a question I've had actually for all presenters. I think we're seeing, like, with this rapid sort of use of digital tools in this COVID pandemic, but we've also been maybe more critical towards how do we use technology. So I'm curious about what you see as in the future, for instance, for the use of videos in lab work, for instance. Do you see that students would maybe also use video more for their own documentation in the future, and for the social media aspect? One thing that I've talked to colleagues about is the use also of social media during lectures. So like having discussions on Discord or in chats, or wherever that sort of supplements or frames the discussions. So how do you see in your three very different applications of technology, how do you see that in a future setting? Maybe Gottfried, do you want to? You are also an author for today, or Daniel and Thomas and Ida?
Yeah, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I'll turn up the volume a bit
Okay.
here on my end.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. With our system here, there is more emphasis on practical dispensation. And most of the courses we handle require students engaging with hands-on practical activities. So the lecturer's presence is paramount to be accepted in some areas where they can have industrial attachment. It requires that you adopt digital systems to bring field work to the classroom. And this is where we find computer technology very useful. Added impetus to enhance field activities, practical dispensation, and engagement with physical activities that happens on the ground. So it's very useful that we adopt these systems, especially in the domain of practical work, so that we don't leave the students just to read notes without having experience on the field. So once you have the technology to provide multimedia learning resources, I think it's in place, it's good. And we have the skill to do that. And that's how come we came up with this technology of bringing field work to the classroom. Right now, the videos are online. So wherever the students find themselves, whether restricted or with some freedom, they can still access practical activities as it happens on the field.
Thank you. And what about you, Ida? How do you see?
That's what I want to chip in.
Okay, yes, thank you so much. And sorry if I interrupted anything. And Ida, what about you? How do you see sort of the future? You also posted, I think, a question similar in that way.
Yeah. My view, it's purely from a teacher perspective and a practitioner perspective in here. And what I see when students come to university in the first year or even in the master level, and what we need for them, we really need to lead the way in terms of technology use, not the social media as Thomas presents. So I think there is something personal and social that they use in their everyday life, and they are very, very good at that, and they are upfront with that. But when it comes to professional life, I think we need to set the examples. We need the ones that lead them, because, and I think it's also some sort of progressive learning or capacity they have to develop, because I see them coming in the first year, and maybe looking on Mike, and you also see the same thing. When they get here from high school, they come formatted in doing in one way only. We ask for a project management or a time schedule, and they put it on bullet points as a list. They don't get out of this making everything prescriptive and descriptive. So visualization, that is so important in the field, and they do not do it. So we really need to insist and push for them to actually start doing it. And recently I read this systems thinking paper about systems thinking and the problem design that is so part of Aalborg practice. It's also about visualization, and it's very important that they create these visual tools and make things visual, but they don't do it. So I think that professionally and academically, I think teachers need to lead them, need to guide them. That's what I see. And in terms also future, we still have we still need to have the presence and the interaction, and that might actually kind of be replaced if we start having more virtual reality as part of the group's work somehow. But I don't know, because there's a social aspect that needs to be present.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's also, I agree with you that we definitely do need to set some direction for the students to work, but it's also kind of a balance or a dilemma in a way, because we also want them to decide for themselves, right? I mean, at least for my students, that some of them did actually say we would have wished you had suggested a certain, you know, Trello or something and just told us to use this one. and I understand that from like a student perspective, but on the other hand, it's also a competence that you need to develop to choose between different tools, right?
And I think that when we move to, sorry to just to compliment on that, but I think then we need to be on a more stream of the flipped. We give the assign for them to search the options and make the advantages or disadvantage of, and then they choose one and use. I wonder if, and then we can do that online, and then we can do it, you know, easily. But I wonder if we have the time for also do that. That's another question.
Also
but,
important one.
Yeah, but yeah.
There's also a question here from, or a comment here from Regina. I think that when they see or experience different styles from the faculty, they will develop their own style. I think that's very true. Regina, do you want to elaborate on that, or is it just, you know, do you want someone to comment specifically?
I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yes, we hear you fine.
Okay. I think that that's very important, as they, especially when they attend conferences and they interact with other faculty beyond their own universities, other students. You pick a few things from each of these experiences, and it's like language. You form your own language.
That's true.
Style and the way that they do things. So I think the diversity of views, the diversity of presentation gives them a very robust in a particular way. They can do things differently. And that helps a lot.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's also, just as Ida said, it's also a balance there, right? Because some students, at least in an internal study we did, the students were also quite frustrated with all the different ways that teachers were doing different things in different styles, right? So like, it's also, I guess, a balance, but I agree with you very much. And what about you, Thomas? What do you see for the future of use of social media in teaching and PBL?
Yeah, first of all, I think it's a very dynamic process. So it's very hard to tell what the specific tools are going to be, because yeah, for now, I mean, a very hot topic is also actually serious gaming, where they also, for instance, included also in Discord, managed to chat along with, for instance, developing serious gaming, but also they sometimes use serious gaming as part of their group coordination. So that's kind of interesting that, yeah, that serious gaming also could be used for that, as well as, I mean, technologies also within AI, VR is in huge development. So certainly you could also have opportunities also teaching wise for showing other kinds of examples within these technologies. So it's under huge development. But what I think is, and I totally agree that it's also about kind of still to have some kind of a technology understanding within also both reflectiveness, perspectives, and critique towards the technologies. So not just, of course, using it, but having it in a very reflective way, but also having their perspectives in terms of what they can do and what they can't do, as well as, of course, the critique towards that. And then on top of that, also mention the competences and skills, both for the students and for those facilitating teaching supervision, that they also need to be comfortable with this, because bottom line is it actually also comes to trust. So there is a matter of trust embedded in using these various different social media. But another kind of concern that I think that we have is how to measure all this. I mean, it is very complicated because the students are different. There are different cultures even within the groups, different cultures at the department, at the faculty, at the university. So I think within such a dynamic use that there are some methodological interesting elements in this, how to actually measure students' media use. And it's not that there has not been there are already lots of research within this, but I still think that that there is needed a better outline or identification mapping as well as the validity, reliability on this. So I think there is lots of works that can still be done in terms of how to actually measure this.
Yes, I agree very much, and I think that at least I've seen some in recent years some really interesting studies where you combine both the more qualitative approach with a quantitative, but also with a very sort of thorough sort of use of data, and also being present in in that digital space with the students is an interesting form of data collection and evaluation. So yeah, that's very interesting. I'm wondering, because that's also a question you had, Ida, all of these different movements you see, how do they, in your opinion, how do they sort of tap into that discussion about student competences in terms of digital skills, both in terms of user skills, but also creator reflective skills related to the use of technology, and especially maybe how do we assess that? Like, how do we assess a student's competence in using social media or in using videos for learning, using an online course? How do we do that? Do you have any ideas?
I'm very much in favor of the development of so where where you have your point of departure and where actually you can reach, because that's where you actually see the potential of a student. And I think that's what the competences is also about, right? Because then if you have a new situation, then if you have a new something, like you say, this movements, and then the context change, they should be able to adapt. They should be able to, to grasp, and then also have this trajectory of learning and development. I'm more and more in favor of looking into the development trajectory and learning trajectory of the students in this context, especially in terms of competences. And of course, then we say, yes, he will have to have the knowledge. Yes, he will learn, but he will know exactly what kind of resources we'll need and look for it. So that this is, I'm more and more in favor of that. And if we actually read the documents, for example, in the European Commission, and if we look into this lifelong learning or 8 key concepts for competencies for lifelong learning and everything, what they actually write there, state there, is actually what we have to see, because we cannot teach everything just to know about those things. It needs to be from a development perspective, in my opinion. Yeah. So that then how do we assess that? Well, that's a very good question. I can say that when a student, like the example I presented in the paper with Frank at the end, when you have a student writing you an email with a long email that he says all these statements, and then he said, okay, this made a difference. And then said, okay, yes, he learned, because he can really say before it was like this, and now I know forward. So
yeah, that's a good point. Anyone else want to add something to that? It doesn't seem like it. At least I would say that it's something we're working on, right? How to develop it, even like maybe a combination of self-assessment, peer assessment, and some form of more formal assessment might be one way to go, at least for more personal learning trajectories and assessment in that area. Yeah. Some very, very interesting discussions. There is a comment here from Michael. I say that the upcoming XR world do need another understanding and approach for processes. Michael, do you want to elaborate a bit on that? That's an interesting comment. We have a few minutes left, so. Maybe, maybe not. It's just a comment. Great. It is definitely, I think, a very good point about process. What is process in this, and how do we track? How do we assess? How do we embed reflection into processes, both in PBL and learning, but also in even after, when you enter into industry, how do you keep assessing process? So that's a really good point. Okay.
There is also, I mean, of course there are, I mean, and that is also my point, that most common used is some kind of self-assessment, evaluations, questionnaires, interviews, as well as some observations. But there's also the new kind of psychophysiological measures, using, for instance, eye tracking. That could be used, even maybe EEG, skin conductance. Could be fun to measure the arousal level throughout different PBL group work, throughout different use of social media. Yeah, but
lectures is just no.
Well, depending on the lectures, but yeah.
Sure.
But yeah, I think this combination, as well as there are also now lots of these big data, log data, that you can actually provide. So yeah, I think it also opens up for lots of new opportunities within mixed method strategies.
For sure. Okay, so anyone else want a last comment before we sum up for today? Okay, it doesn't seem like it. So thank you very much to our presenters. In this session, we discussed PBL and blended PBL environments, specifically with attention to videos in lab work and learning, and how we implement that, and also project management courses, e-learning courses. How do we use that in PBL settings, as well as students' use and reflections regarding social media use in their group work. And just for a final reminder here, we have the PBL week in 2021. This is the sort of the flipped sessions leading up to that. And of course, we hope to see many of you. And there's also a new opening for new call of papers. So you're very welcome to reach out if you have any questions about this. And we hope to see you again soon for another session on PBL. Thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye, Ida. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much.